Hi, it's Gadget UK here again. As you can see, this time I'm looking at a Dragon 32. So these were manufactured by Dragon Data Limited in Wales. Lovely machines these. My friend Trevor had one of these. I used to go around to his house occasionally. I think the first game I played on one of these was I can't even say it, UGH, and I've got a cassette of that coming actually, just for nostalgia reasons really. I thought I'd get a copy of that. And what I thought was Pitfall, I played that on here as well, but it turns out it's not. It's called Cuthbert in the Jungle, I think it is. So yeah, that was quite cool. It's almost like, when I think back to it, it's a direct rip of Pitfall actually. It looks absolutely identical. Now he had a really weird monitor, I think, that came with his Dragon. It was like a green screen sort of monitor, so I only remember, sort of shades of green. But nevertheless, it was quite cool. It was limited in some ways, this machine, but these were very, very similar. In fact, almost 100, like 99% identical to the Tandy Coco. I think there's very little difference. I think there's a serial port. There might be a serial port in this, and there isn't in the Tandy. It might be the other way around. I forget which. But also the keyboard is mapped differently, and I think there's a subtle difference in the ROM to do with identification of how much memory you've got. So you can. I've seen. It was a while back, but I looked a few years back at these, and I was looking at. There was an article somewhere, because it did cross my mind. I wonder if you could convert one of these to a Coco or vice versa, and you can do that. You can do that. You need to do a modification to the keyboard connection, let's say, and do a modification to the ROM, I think. But in theory, it should work with very little other changes, and I think you'd probably get a very high compatibility level with the software there. So that might be something I might look at in a future video. Maybe make it switchable, so I can switch between Tandy and Dragon. Now obviously the ROM's the easy bit to switch. I could do that. I could have lots of ROMs on there, switch between them pretty easily, but the keyboard would need something a little bit more. I'd need a couple of chips on there just to be able to when I switch over, have the keyboard wired in a different way. But that's entirely possible. Anyway, this is described as untested. It may work, it may not, I've no idea. But before we do anything, I'll just take the lid off and give you a quick look inside. This screw here was missing, which annoys me, but I can always replace it. So we'll just turn it back over, and the lid should come off now, I think. There we go. I mean, it's in good condition. I don't know if you can tell, other than a bit of a crease here, and these always ripple up. If you look on eBay for second-hand ones of these, you'll find they're always bubbled up somewhere along here. You can get a replacement one of these, like a vinyl that someone's, created. I saw a seller on eBay just last night, actually, but that's not too bad, actually. It's not torn or anything. So what I might be able to do is heat it or something and just slide it up there, maybe stick it back down. That's all it needs, just a little bit of heat there, just to, well, that might not work, I don't know, we can always give it a go, got nothing to lose. But I mean, the case in general is very good. There's a few bits of paint and stuff on it, some dirt and some, yeah, there's a scratch there, but actually it's very good. Some of these are really, really super yellowed. This one's not so bad. It kind of reminds me just of, like I said, the one that my friend Trevor had. Yeah, so I'm not familiar with the part numbers on these. The 6809, there you go, that's the CPU, so I do know that. That's not an issue. We've got a relay there, that's going to be the tape port. It's interesting, that's socketed. You've got a modulator built in on these here, and obviously your regulation board here on the back. Is that a 5-volt regulator or something? I'm not sure. We've got a couple of regulators there. There's a screw missing out of that, and the screw hole underneath kind of looks a bit torn. So I'm wondering if someone's had this out and done a bit of tinkering, trying to work out what's going on, maybe trying to diagnose a fault, I don't know. A ton of diodes here on the power supply, and not very many caps, like 4 caps. I think JaysVintageJunk did a recap on one of these recently. Actually, I'll post a link down below in the description. And if we just look at these chips here side on, hopefully you can see these are ITT 4116s. Yeah, so I'm guessing we've got 16 of these, have we got? Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 15, 16. Yeah, so we've got 16 of those, just counted those. It's interesting, the weird alignment here. You've got one more down here than you have up here, so it's like you've got 7 up here, and then you've got 9 in the column there. The other interesting observation here, as well, as I point out, in a lot of boards you find that the pin 1 alignment is maintained in the X and the Y axis, you know, your horizontal and vertical axis on the board when you're laying out the chips. So what I mean by that is, you know, any of this orientation would always have the pin 1 to the left. But if you just move up a little bit here, you can see that's not the case. We've got 2 on the right there. And it's the same with any that are going the other way. You know, you can see the pin 1 down here. I don't know if there's another one in that orientation anywhere, actually. No, there isn't. I think all the others are the other orientation, but still, that's a bit of an oddity. You know, and it's the same thing down here. You can see this, the GI, you've got pin 1, and then pin 1 over here. It's a bit crazy. But, it's, you know, there's no reason why you can't do that. It's just seems to be one of those things that most board manufacturers seem to do. They always seem to line everything in a certain way. In this, they seem to be a bit higgledy-piggledy. But it's certainly a nice system. You know, it's quite basic in terms of games and things. You know, like I say, it's you know, it's a Tandy effectively. You know, so if you think about the quality of games you get on a Tandy, it's not going to be dissimilar on this. So I think what we'll do next is I'll connect the power supply, and the power supply, as you can see, it says trans supply. I've got one here. Let me show you. This is the original one. I remember this because my friend Trevor had exactly the same one, because I was always surprised that these things are riveted. They've got rivets there underneath, but yeah, you could get into that. It's just a giant transformer. So this is going to be outputting AC, I'm assuming, and I think that's why we've got the regulator board on the back of the Dragon there. But the other side is has been removed. Someone's pulled the plug off it. So we don't even know whether that works, but I'll get a plug on there, clean up the cable, power it in, and initially we'll try it with RF. We'll take the modulator output there. You can see you've got on-off switch, you've got your monitor. As far as I understand, you've got a composite goes out there, so we can tap off composite. Modulator we just talked about, reset button, joystick DIN there, taped in. I've got a couple of adapters, I'll show you that in a sec. Another joystick, yes, you've got left joystick, you can see that it says L joystick, R joystick, and PIO, and then a cart slot on the side there. I think some Tandy kart games will work in this. It depends whether they've utilised BASIC or not. Because coming back to us about the differences there, you know, between a Coco and a Dragon, it's all about the ROM. You know, so if you've got some code that's just running raw 6809 code, and maybe the memory map stuff's not the issue. You know, it's not an issue there in terms of determining how much RAM it's got. If you're not making any calls to BASIC, it would probably just work, I would think. It came with a whole bunch of cables. The first thing that popped out was this, and I thought, oh, it's got a SCART lead, fantastic. But it hasn't. This looks like it's off something else. I was thinking maybe a PlayStation or PlayStation 2. Look, just look at that. What on earth's that? It does kind of look like that to me. I mean, it could be SNES or something, I don't know, it's weird. And it's got a single thing here, presumably for the audio, so you can tap the audio off separately, I don't know. Or maybe composite comes out of that. Maybe that's a PlayStation lead. I'm not sure, but yeah. So we got some what look like maybe the cassette wires here. You know, it's just a 5-pin in to 5-pin in. I've got 2 of them. I mean, I could use those for MIDI. MIDI actually, they're a bit crusty, but they'll clean up. Another one here. What's that? Where's that go? Yeah, that goes to 3 mono 3.5 mil DC. You know, jacks there. So yeah, that you could use that for tape input, I think. But there's this one, and that looks like the same thing. I think, just a different manufacturer or something, you know, the 5-pin into 3.5 monos. So again, I could use that. I'm just wondering why there's 3. Maybe one's remote and then you've got in and out or something like that. I wasn't expecting 3. I could understand 2 like you get on a spec key. 3 would suggest that you've got a remote signal perhaps as well there. Maybe that's what that relay is used for. And then obviously, you know, a Centronics, as you can see, a Centronics, you know, 25-pin to Centronics connector for a printer. So yeah, it's a while since I've seen one of those actually. I think out of all the cables I've got in my loft, I don't think I've got an actual Centronics. I think I've got, oh maybe I have, I've got, yeah, the standard print leads like that back in the day. I would have had tons of them, I think. So you can't quite see where I'm measuring there, but the centre pin on that regulator is grounded. A 7905, so that's a minus 5 volt regulator, pin 1 is the ground. So that's, we know we've got a ground from measuring from there, that's the point I'm trying to make. And if I now switch that on, you can hear the relay then actually. Yeah, did you hear that? wonder if we've got a dirty switch. That's a possibility. Let's just measure down here, and pin 3. Yeah, half a volt. You can't really see that. It's going to be hard to try and show you both things at once here. But yeah, on pin 3, half a volt. Middle pin, which is the input, nothing hardly. There's hardly anything going into that negative regulator there. Now it could be bad solder points, I'm not sure. So there's something strange going on. I think before I do anything else, I'm going to get the screws out of this board here and just remove the board and have a look on the underside, because I'm not convinced we've not got like a bad solder point or something like that. So we've got 2 voltages provided by this. We don't know whether those are correct. I need to check on the that 9-pin DIN. That could be an issue. So on the D-type connector here, between pin 1 and pin 3, we've got 30 volts there. That would seem to match with the 28 volts it seems to suggest as the B output on that transformer. And then I'm guessing between pins 4 and 5 there, we've got 9 volts. It's saying 8.5, I think, on the transformer. So that's probably our 8.5. Yeah, you've got to have the power switch in order to get it out there, because otherwise it just snags on the case there. We've got an adjustment over here which might be for one of the voltages there, 5 volts perhaps. It could even be for the video because it's right next to the modulator here. That would make more sense. So I think I might just have a quick probe around, just check some of these diodes, the resistor there. But it might be okay, this. I mean, we might still be missing a voltage there, but the fact the relay clicks makes me think that maybe the logic is okay. So what might be an idea is to connect it back up, find a 7.4 logic chip on here somewhere, or a CMOS chip, or something. There's some 7.4 logic down here, quite a lot of discrete 7.4 logic actually. Just check, make sure they've got 5 volts there. And we'll come back to, if there is a voltage missing now on the -5, we could perhaps come back to that. Although, thinking about this, it's got 4116 DRAMs, isn't it? It could be required for those. I'm trying to think, aren't there similar that you got in a Spectrum where you've got to provide -5 as well as +5? It could be, and if that's the case, we could have a RAM fault on this as well. Well, I'll show you this if I can, but we do have 5 volts. If I just measure from that pin to that pin there, as you can see, 5 volts. So the logic has got the right voltage. I mean, well, most of the logic's got the right voltage. The RAM here may not. I'll need to look up the pinouts of 4116 in a minute, I think, just to see what that needs to be provided with. But if we're missing -5, which we may well be, we could have, like I say, it could have taken out the RAM. Strictly speaking, I shouldn't really be powering it this way. If you're going to go into one of these for the first time, it might be an idea to disconnect the power here, and just make sure you've got your -5 before you start. But I mean, it's a bit late for that. And I'm guessing the one down here is perhaps 12 volts. Let's just have a look at that. Now I measured on the back of the that 9-pin DIN there, and there's I think it's pins 1 and 2. You've got a winding on the transformer there, and then 1, 2, yeah, and then 3, 4, and 5. You've got 2 taps actually. 2 between 3 and 4, 1 between 4 and 5. And those are all got AC coming out of them, no problems at all. But we should have something coming through. Now, on the schematics, this resistor here seems to feed the regulator that goes to -5, and it says in the diagram it should have +18. Was it negative 18 volts, and there was -20. So we've got voltage there, and then from there it goes straight to the regulator. Now, this is the 7905, so that's going to be nothing to do with it. I think that's providing the 5 volts. Yeah, that'll be providing the 5 volts. The 5 volts we know we've got. I couldn't see any damage on the underside, so why is there not -20 on this regulator here? It doesn't get red hot. It's stone cold. There's nothing on the pin 2 and pin 3. Pin 1 is the ground on this regulator. So I'm missing something somewhere. I'm going to have to take the power supply back out again. It's only holding with 1 screw at the moment, and just re-inspect and see if I can follow where that resistor's going, and try and make sense of what's happening to the -5. Yeah, this is one of those crazy things that's just, it's an optical illusion. It looks like it's connected, but it's not. It's been broken off there. That's the blooming issue with that. So someone has been blooming tinkering with this. It annoys me, because I'm sure there would have been a screw and a washer or something to maybe isolate, or maybe not. Maybe that tab is connected to pin 1 on here, I'm not sure. But yeah, we'll get that off. I'll see if I've got replacement 7905. and we'll get a new 7905 on there. In a later video I'll perhaps recap it. It's not going to need recapping at this stage. The other thing I'll do while I'm here now is just get some contact clear into this switch as well, because it's a bit crusty. It's not been used in a long time. These are about 35 plus years old, aren't they? They're ancient, these things, really. So the DRAM there, the top right hand pin, 5 volts, and then if we look at pin 1, minus 5 volts. So that's a good place to check your minus 5 volts. And somewhere down here, yeah, I'm guessing the bottom right hand corner pin there's 12 volts. So I was getting no picture of IRRF at all, but as you can see, we've made some progress here. All I've done is connect up via composite, and I'll show you in a minute. It's just a really fudgy, just a DIN, bare exposed DIN down a dodgy wire to a dodgy RCA socket. I'm pressing reset, and you can see we get different things going on there. The reset's working because it's going to be okay, but obviously we've got like a RAM issue there by the looks of things, screen RAM, post hazard, I guess. We could have a fault somewhere else, maybe with the graphics side of things. It's very interesting. If I switch it off and on, just bear with me. Hopefully we'll see the full welcome thing there. Yeah, see Dragon Data, 16K basic interpreter, copyright 1982, Microsoft. And we've just got those spurious characters in the middle of the display there. Now if there is a RAM fault, it could be because we were lacking the -5 for a period of time there. I mean, for not very long, it was only really while I was testing it just for 30 seconds, 60 seconds, but that's all you need. You lose one of those voltages and those 4116 DRAMs take offence to it. Yeah, so I think we've got a RAM problem at this stage. Switch it on. The flickering nature there, and there are almost some of the things there, corruptions and inconsistent spots. And if I was to try and type something, see, like type print, you see, look, it starts to freak out. How do you backspace? It's not backspace in there. This is the thing. I'll try and reset it if I can find the reset button. If I do say CLS, watch, return, I think that's worked. And then it's frozen. So yeah, I'm thinking RAM actually. It's the most probable, and I'll tell you what, well, the other reason why it's most probable is because we're missing the -5 volts at some point there. Certainly for a good minute while I was measuring voltages, we had no -5. So I think what I'm going to do next is socket up all the RAM. Now I've ordered some RAM, this 4116 RAM here. Yeah, so you can use a 4164 to replace these. You need to bend a few of the pins and stuff out of place, because obviously these have got -5 and +12. You don't want those voltages going to this. And you've got the additional address line on a 4164, but you could use that. So yeah, what I'm thinking is if I socket these up now, I can then swap some of them around, and I should see the behaviour move with the chips moving, if you see what I mean. So to get the board out, obviously we need to remove the keyboard here, I think, and then there's going to be a couple of screws around the edges of the board holding it in. This connector here just pulls off like that. There's going to be a similar one under here for the keyboard, I think. I'm not sure what that pot's for, but you can see it looks a bit dirty, a bit crusty. We need to clean that up. It's like a corrosion or something. But I've got the board out. Make sure you wear an ESD wrist strap when you're handling something like this, and don't be putting this board on carpet. I certainly won't be doing. And something else I'll show you while we're here. I can only show you part of this. Can you see? Someone's previously owned this. They've written it. Well, that's obvious someone's previously owned it, but someone's put the name there and the full address, including the postcode. So I think I'll mark it up similarly, actually, inside when I'm done. So I'll show you a little bit of what I'm doing here. I've removed the first two, no problems at all. The pins are kind of bent outwards, away from the centre of the chip. So like these ones on this row here are bent towards the right hand side. So what you've got to do is try and, add some fresh solder and flux to start with, heat them, and then just push them until you'll feel them eventually when they get to temperature. That one's got a big tray, so it'll take a while. There you go. You can see it wobbling. And then remove the solder. You can see that one's come off. Yeah, so let's say heat it till it feels free. Hold it to the left a little bit. You're almost bending it just a little bit because these are stuck to the right hand side on these. And the ones on the other side are obviously pressed to the left. Again, wait for it to reach temperature. Just bend it to the left a little bit. Hold it so it's slightly left aligned, and then just repeat that. And just inspect the magnifying glass to make sure it's it's snapped off there, it's free. As soon as I've finished desoldering this side, I'll show you the next step. But if you take your time with these, there's no reason why you can't get them off without damaging anything. You need, obviously, if you've got a powerful iron, you need a temperature controlled iron. I'm just using a low powered 15 watt iron here, and it's just the ticket for this, really. It's just about right. You've got probably no chance of overheating using something like this. So again, this is not a new technique. I've shown you this a number of times before, actually. Just put the pliers on 2 or 3 pins here, very carefully. You don't want to scratch the PCB, and just pivot like this. That snaps off there. That snaps off, and again. And if they don't feel like they're snapping off or freely moving, obviously don't force them. You're just doing this really gently. But this is a super easy way of snapping them off the edges here without damaging the board or without damaging the pins. And then just inspect from the other side, just to make sure you've not got any large blobs of solder. That's looking pretty free, actually. And just obviously check both sides. So that's the other side. Yeah, there's a little bit more solder there, but I suspect that that's ready to come off now. And then when you think you're ready, this is the difficult bit. Just try and get a screwdriver in there, just gently. See that? Hardly any force at all. And if you do get any resistance, just inspect, make sure you have got the solder off. But I think that's going to be good enough to come off here. These are coming off pretty easy, actually. This one's going to be tricky because of the way that cap is there. You just got to kind of get in at different angles here and twist a little bit. You see this side's free. Can you see that? That side's coming up. So we'll just rotate it this way around, I think. Just move that cap down a little bit. See if I can somehow. There you go. Can you see that? That's coming up. That's coming off. That's off there. There you go. And as you can see, no pad traces, no leg damage. It's fine. So as you can see, once you get in the zone, it doesn't take too long. It's taken about 35 minutes to do the first 8. So I've just got in fact 9. I've just got 7 left. That's good. I'm glad there's one more on the side. It makes that side a bit easier. But what I would do is remove them all before you start sticking sockets on. And do put sockets on. And the reason I would remove them all first is because, say for instance I removed that one, then stuck a socket, then came to do this one, I can't access the side of the pins here. The socket's going to be super close to this chip. So it's better to do certainly a row at a time like that. And even I'd perhaps do this row here as well, because again, when you've got a socket on here, when you come to try and get this chip up with a screwdriver, the socket here could just hinder you a bit. You've got much more access and stuff without anything being here now. So I'll just continue do those last 7 and get a full set of sockets on there. So there we go, there's all the RAM removed. Just need to inspect super close, make sure there's no damage, which there isn't. And again, there's no damage under here. We've just got the odd place where maybe I've got a bit of solder, the solder mask has come off just like there a little bit. So make sure you don't get any shorts and things, but yeah, new sockets, clean it up. So I got the first socket on, soldered diagonal opposite points, then inspect it, make sure it's straight. And then just go around and solder each pin, just to make sure you use enough time for it to flow through to the other side, and add enough solder. There we go, all 16 sockets on there. I just need to clean off the flux there, but the solder points are alright, it's just tons and tons of flux under there. So I'll just get a cap of IPA. We'll just pour that over that area there. Just have a bit of a brush around. I mean, strictly speaking, I would normally use cotton buds preliminary, it's the first sort of pass. But there's that many solder points here, and they're so close together that I suspect using the cotton buds, I would just get tons of cotton fibres everywhere and actually not shift much of the flux. So we'll just go over this a few times. Yeah, so you can see the connections there, super tidy now, all the flux has come off. Use some the solder braid with a bit of flux just to suck off the solder off the tips there, And then once you've done that, once the solder's all been removed, just use some needle nose pliers like this to flatten the ends, flatten them down, to straighten them so they're in totally straight before you stick them in the socket. Because any of these bits of solder, and if they're bent and stuff, you'll damage the sockets actually. So even though my RAM hasn't arrived, this is conclusive proof that it is the RAM actually. You can see to start with, we just get a green screen there. Now, a minute ago, I managed to get it up actually, just from switching it off and on. It came up. I'm guessing what's happened here, the area of memory that's now got an issue is perhaps not where the video stuff was, which was primarily interfacing, affecting the display there. It's now in the area of the stack and the program code and stuff. Where it's trying to boot. There you go. Boot basic. Just watch this. CLS clears the screen. 10. Hopefully it won't crash. Print. Hello. Run. So yeah, we've got one of the RAMs there is glitchy in the location that it's booting from. I was thinking what I could do actually is socket the ROM and produce my own memory test ROM for this. All we'd have to do is have a look at the data sheet for the CPU on this. Is it 6809 or something? I think it is. Work out what the reset vector is, and then just write some binary there, some opcodes to literally just enable the RAM, enable the video output, and then just work through a range of addresses, writing and reading back values, and maybe indicate something on the screen, maybe a colour change on the screen rather than some text, because obviously if you've got a RAM problem you can have problems with the screen RAM, but maybe changing the screen colour could be an indication of which RAM is faulty or something like that. I mean, there's 16 of these, so it could be a bit problematic to do that. You could do it with a number of flashes, I guess. So I might just kind of look at that actually, just to see how feasible that would be. And the fascinating thing here actually is once this is warmed up, once the RAM is warmed up, it seems to just work all the time actually. Now I'm sure there's probably a problem further into memory here. We're not utilising hardly any of the memory at this point. And the other interesting thing, and I'll get the temperature gauge out in a minute to show you, but like if I put my finger on the tops of these ones here, these chips, they're fairly cool actually, just lukewarm, any of those there in that bank. But these ones here are a lot hotter, like twice as hot, especially just here, these ones. Yeah, so I think the other thing I'll do next actually is just swap out this regulator, the -5V regulator, because we had to bodge a bit of solder on there just to join up that broken pin. I'll perhaps get a bit of thermal compound on there. I'll just make sure that's supposed to be grounded. I'm pretty sure it is, and we'll get a screw through there as well. But I'll just resocket those two chips, and I did make sure they were firmly in from the start. So I get our replacement 7905 in there now. So as you can see, the voltage regulator's stood up right there. All I did was, with that damaged pad where someone had a tinker previously, is just overlap the leg a little bit on there before I cut it off. So it's okay. It's making a good joint. Now the interesting thing is I did check connectivity, and the first pin is ground, I think, on there, as I showed earlier, and the tab here I think is either the input or the output, I forget which. So if you grounded that, you'd lose your -5 again and probably kill that regulator. So whether it was ever screwed down there or not, I don't know. It does look like the screw is a little bit, the hole there's a little bit torn up. So maybe someone did bend it over, screw it down, it killed some of the RAM. They then took the screw out and thought, oh, what's going on? The regulator then was disconnected. I've got no idea what the sequence of events was there. But the other thing I was going to do in an update video at some point is get one of these. You can get like a piece of mic or whatever it is, an isolation thing, tab that just fits over there, and then you can get like a little plastic screw mount that sort of fits through the hole there, if you like, to isolate that, and just then you can screw it in. So it's kind of making, you can have some heatsink compound on there, so it'll make a join with a heatsink, but it won't be an electrical join on the tab. So you could do that sort of thing. But the other thing I would say is I've tested this as is now, stood upright with my finger on there like that, and it's stone cold. Even when it's been on for 10 minutes, it's really cold. So the draw on the -5 volts is going to be very, 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 very low. Got no idea what the -5 is used for within the DRAM there, but it seems to be hardly utilised. So there is no reason to to get stressed with that. Think, oh, better heatsink it. It's not going to last. So just showing you what I meant to show you earlier but forgot. If we just measure these voltages, can you see here? Got 17.9 volts on pin 1 there, going into the 7. Well, it's not 7812. It's an equivalent, but it's a 12 volt regulator. So we've got 20 volts roughly going in. If we look at the middle pin, that should be a ground. Yeah, it is. Got to be super careful not to short the legs here to either the heatsink or each other, because we've got slightly higher voltages here. 12 volts on the output there. So that's the 12 volts. So it's worth checking that. And yeah, I'm not going to be able to do it on this one without. I might be able to measure the tab. Yeah, you can see measuring the tab there. So that's the input, like that, almost straight upwards. And the chips are coming out okay. So the idea is just to go through all of these here and swap out for these replacements here, brand new chips, and then we'll perhaps test without one chip, see what happens. And if the system doesn't boot, that's a good indication that the chip I've not got in there, is obviously is needed at that particular point in time. I can then go through the old ones one by one to test them. Now, the other thing I can do, which I'll probably do a little bit later on, is write some basic code there to test the RAM. Yeah, so as I work through this, I'll just show you, at various points here I've tested without a specific chip. And anywhere in this block here, you get major graphical issues. It doesn't come up with a prompt, you get coloured blocks and things like that going on. But as soon as we got to this one here, it's fine. I'll show you. It seems to be operating okay, despite the fact we've got a chip missing. So this is the reason why, like I say, I think we've still got a RAM fault. I think all I did is when I changed the chips around, I moved the faults from one place, maybe down here, to somewhere else. But the good news is, like I say, we know that if I take one of these out down here on this block here, it won't work. So once I've got a full working setting, I can just remove that one, one down here, and then just go through the others to work out perhaps which ones are faulty, because they're not all going to be faulty. Yeah, getting a lot of this. Well, that was seriously painful. Trying to get that to load was unbelievable. The final thing I had to do there was retension the tape myself. I'll show you what I mean in a minute. I took the tape out and I, wound it to its extreme, rewound it effectively, and then, kept turning the first spindle there just to try and tighten the tape. Fast forwarded it, rewinded it, and it loaded first time. And I must have tried about 100 times prior to that. There's no way it would load. So yeah, it did need that retention. But it was also interesting, the problem I had with that crystal. Before you could just literally tap the system. I'll show you. If I point to the screen now, it's not doing it. I'll tap the board, swallow the chips, nothing. So yeah, that's a kind of a design fault. Where that crystal was sat, it's right next to a wire that goes somewhere else. So I noticed it when I first got it, actually. When we had the corruptions on the screen, you could press space, and if you tapped it too hard, you had that issue there where the video went screwy and it would crash. So yeah, it had a few different issues. We had the problem with the regulator there. That probably contributed to the RAM dying. Swapped out all of the RAM, although all of it is not faulty. I'm pretty sure a majority of the chips are okay, actually. The old ones, need to test them. And then finally, a couple of issues, that crystal issue, and then this tape needed retentioning. So I'll give that another go. I'll rewind it and load it at the same time just to make sure. But yeah, that seems to be working. Yeah, we're getting there. I had 3 more bad loads before I got a good load again. So I did the same sort of thing. At this particular point in the tape where it errored, I stopped it instantly, took the tape out, could see there's just very subtle ripples in there. So I retensioned it at that point. You could see the ripples were kind of straightened out. It wasn't as noticeable. The other thing I did is retension there's like a sponge that sits behind the tape there. I'll show you that in a second as well, and just retensioned that. I rewound the tape first just to make sure I was nowhere near any of the actual tape containing the data and stuff at the time when at the point where I adjusted that. And then the final thing I did is just clean the heads again. And there was just tiny little bit of brown residue came off on the heads there. And I think this is the thing, you use old magnetic media, and you get all these sort of issues with it. The tapes are not great from years, decades of being played and being stored in cold, damp conditions and even humid conditions and things. So you get all of this stuff coming off on the heads. You get little kinks and things in the tape where it's been stopped at various points and rewound or just left sat in a tape deck, etc. All of the analogy sort of things that I absolutely hate about tapes. So I'll rewind that and I'll keep just reloading this just to see how reliable this is now. But I'm guessing I've turned a corner point with this really, because I just couldn't get it to load. Must have tried 50, more than 50, maybe 60 or 70 times, and just various volume levels. Nothing would work. It would always fail at various points. So everything I ever dismantle and throw away, I take the screws off, and you can see I found one. Actually, this is the original screw, and that's the replacement. You can see that's pretty much identical, actually, apart from having a bit of a dust-coloured head there. So I've got a replacement, exact replacement screw there. You don't need to put the quotes, actually, I've worked out from the instructions here. You can just type clode. We'll just leave that a sec. I'll show you, hopefully, that it's loading fairly reliably now, actually. Whilst that's loading, I'll show you the box here. The artwork and stuff is quite nice. So this was the game my friend Trevor had, actually. He had a couple. He had the Cuff Bit in the Jungle, which I'll get a copy of as well. So you can see it says the instructions here, clode M, press return. And I wasn't aware of this. It comes up OK when it's loaded. And I was like, well, what do you do? Tried to run. Doesn't do anything. List, nothing. It's because it's machine code. Clode M indicates you're loading machine code. I think you just do straight clode if you just want to load basic programs and things. And you can see this was produced by Softtech International, by Chris Morris. So you've got the basic instructions here, scores for the different enemies and things. It's quite cool, and you can use this with a joystick. I've not tried that joystick yet. It's an awful thing. I might just plug it in when it loads in a minute, assuming it loads in a minute. But yeah, a lot of nostalgia for me just looking at the box here. The tapes are like just over a minute. I can't imagine it's using all 32K there. Program's probably like 6 or 8K, I would think. There we go, it's loaded first time. Exec. So yeah, that was like 2 loads in a row there without issue. I didn't need to retension anything. So yeah, there's a lot to be said about that technique. I'll show you what I mean now. So at the point it's you get a load failure, take the tape out, just rewind it a little bit with a spool here, and can you see ever so subtle ripples and things. And what you want to do when you find one is put your finger in that spindle there, and then turn this one here from this side clockwise, and you can feel it. It's tight. All you're doing is retensioning the tape there. You don't want to go too hard because you could break it, but just doing that a few times there, like that, makes all of the difference, actually. And the other thing I did, and I did this with a plastic tool. I'm not going to use a metal tool here for obvious reasons, but you see this sponge here. If you just look downwards down there, can you see there's like a copper plate? So I know it's not focused very well. So that copper plate on the underside, just try and put something under it, plastic, just lift it up. The best way to do it is rewind the tape, because then you're on the clear part of the tape. So if you did use something magnetic, you wouldn't be causing a problem, but I wouldn't use something magnetic just in case you influence the strip underneath. Although it's copper, I'm not sure whether that could be become influenced by a magnetic field, but still use a plastic tool if you can, and just bend it upwards just a little bit, because those over the playhead presses that in, and over time they can sink back a fair bit. A bit like you get on 8-track carts and cartridges and things like that, actually. But yeah, I'll rewind it and load it again just to be sure, but I'm pretty sure that's all it was. And as I said earlier, that you get these particles and things, the tape's been sat around, you get contaminants and things on there, and that can come off from your head. So when you get a new cassette, if you've played it, you loaded it a few times, it's struggling to load. At that point, maybe as well as doing the retention things, take the tape out and clean your heads just to make sure that the heads are clean and they're not being dirtied by your new cassette. Well, old new cassette. The other thing I'm going to do here is get 3 of these onto each of the large dip chips, actually, because those chips get super hot. I'm talking like as hot as PLAs and SIDs actually on C64s. I'm quite surprised. I'll show you. It's this one here. That's so hot you can't even barely touch it actually. Same with that one. Ouch. Yeah, same with that one. Ouch, that's red hot. That is boiling hot. And the same with that one. This one down here, not so much. And this one down here, not so much either. You can see that. It's just loaded again. So I thought I'd show you the problem with that crystal. Now, you're not going to be able to see it very well. Just, if you look at the corner of the crystal down here, can you see that little wire underneath? And the crystal was pressed flat. And I'll show you. In fact, I've just done it. Can you see that? That's just from pressing that crystal down, actually. Let's see if I can... Yeah, it's not doing the tap thing. But if I just try and flatten that a little bit, and then knock it... No, it's not doing it now. Because obviously I bent it up earlier, so it's not actually making a connection. Let me just see if I can just move it into where it was. See that? That's the behaviour I was getting when you were tapping the board. I'm having to tap the crystal, but yeah, I did it then once with a chip. That crystal can very easily short on the pad below it. So I mean, the other thing, you know, other than just bending it up, you know, so it's off the board like that, the other thing that's worth doing on things like this, and there's some traces right underneath it, I'm amazed that they didn't actually deal with that actually. The other thing you could do is scratch a bit of the can off, which I'll probably do on this, solder a wire on and find the nearest ground. Now you've got to bear in mind, when you're soldering crystals and ceramic caps and things like that, you can damage them with too much heat. You know, you need to solder them for the least amount of time possible, really. So I would suggest, like I say, scratching it first on the end somewhere. Get some flux on there to make sure you know, right from the start, and then get a little bit of solder, try and heat it for the shortest amount of time possible. And then join that wire to the nearest ground. So I'll find a ground. I'm guessing there's going to be a ground down here. You're not going to be able to see it very well. I'm guessing these might be ground rails here. Could be VCC, but I'll test on connectivity, and I'll do that. I'll join the wire up, and I'll do the same with the crystal over here. It's just good practice. It helps with jitter and stuff like that. So the other thing I'm doing here is I've stuck a little piece of double-sided sponge there, right over the top of where that little wire was. It's overlapping it, so there's no way this crystal could ever short on that again. And we'll just peel that back and stick the crystal down onto it, actually. Ideally, you want crystals to be isolated from the vibrations and things like that anyway, ideally. I mean, often they're just soldered straight to the board with a ground strap over there, but yeah, that should do the trick. There we go. So there's no way now that that's ever going to short onto that wire underneath it. So yeah, so we've got a ground there, and it's joined on the cam where there was already a bit of solder there to start with, and it's the sponge there is just providing a little bit of isolation. You know, there's no way it could touch the little wire down here anymore. So I'll join this one up to the nearest ground next. So with this one, there's no traces underneath, but this whole area here is ground. So all I've done is scratch off the solder mask here. As you can see, you know, you've got some bare metal exposed there. And again, on this one, can you see there's a bit of solder already on there? So I'll just add a bit of flux and just join that up with a blob of solder, and we're done. So a bit of a correction, in terms of this one here, if this is grounded, it won't work. I'm not sure why. You know, there's going to be some interference going on there somewhere, probably, with having that grounded. So I'll just remove that little wire there. But this one's fine. In principle, it's always a good idea to have them grounded. I'm not quite sure why this one, like I say, is taking offence to being grounded. But at least the sponge underneath will stop it from joining up. And the other thing I've just done for my sanity is disconnect this, you know, power it on, and measure the voltages again on the regulators down here, and you have got voltages there. So you don't need the board connected. So I would suggest as I said earlier on, the first thing you want to do when you go inside one of these, before you do anything, don't even power it on when you get a Dragon 32. Disconnect that there, you know, plug your power in and measure the voltage just on these regulators here, and for your 5 volts as well. You'll probably be able to measure the 5 volts across one of these caps, maybe, or certainly on the connector here. Yeah, your 5 volts is on that second pin there, pin 2. And it's on the second from the bottom there as well, so we've got two connections there, where you can measure the 5 volts, you know, on the connector here if you wanted to. So I'll have a quick go over this now with this awful thing. I'll show you the wire in a minute. And look at that button. Look at the state of that button. I'm sure it didn't ship with that. That's been modified. So I'll hit OK, and yeah, it's an analog stick. It works okay actually, but it's just awful. So the idea is to nick the eggs from the pterodactyl, but as you can see, once you've nicked one, that Tyrannosaurus Rex makes an appearance. Oh god. Yeah, incredibly difficult. I've not got sound connected at the moment, so we are lacking sound. I'm sure there's some sound. It's going to be pretty basic, I would think. Let's see if I can crop that one before that T-Rex appears. Oh, where's it going? Oh, go away. Oh. Yeah, the diagonals on this controller make it extremely hard. So the first thing with the controller is it's missing a fascia from here. I can't see how you get in it. I've pulled these off, they're just rubber stickies. There's no screw, I can't feel a screw under there, so it must be clipped together, I think. But look at this cable. Look at the state of that. It's awful. It's like solid, you know, it doesn't feel flexible. It's got lumps and twists and things in it. So I might replace the cable, but in the first instance I'm just going to clean it up with some IPA. I might see if I can get into this. Yeah, I might be able to pull the housing off just to see how many cores we've got in there. I mean, it's got 5-pin DIN on it. It's the U-type rather than the circular there. But in theory I could just replace the wire, maybe. That might be an idea. So just for testing, as you can see, what I've been doing here, using this dodgy cable. So, you know, I've got the 5-pin DIN here. This is the right type, that's what I need. And if you look at it from that perspective there, the bottom middle pin is ground, and then you've got video on the left hand most pin there, and audio on the right hand side. Now I didn't have audio connected, and I just had it going like so, using this dodgy wire here to a dodgy socket, so I could have a RCA phono lead in there connected to the TV. So I've not had sound so far, and obviously this is was a temporary thing. So all I've done is order a really cheap cable that's got, you know, two RCA jacks here. The other ends are 3.5 millimetre, and it's about, I don't know, 2 meters long. That's what I've gone for. I'm just going to trim the end off here, you know, chop that off, and fit a proper connector here. I'll use some heat shrink, you know, it connects up the sound and video to those connections there. That's a heat shrink, and you know, slide a proper housing over it, and at least then I've got my own AV cable for this. And this cable only cost me, I think it was £1.30. So, you know, this is the nice thing really. I've got loads of these connectors already. They're only about £1 each. So, I mean, you could get a cable for £2 or £3 perhaps if you looked around. I doubt it. It's going to be one of these things where it's going to be £5 to £10, I would think. So I'll save myself a few pounds doing that. I always prefer to make my own cables where I can. So there we go. Secured in the cable relief nice and tight there. So we'll just give that a go, see if we've got sound. As you can hear there, we've got sound. I loaded the first time as well. I've not used this in a few days. It looks great, and it sounds fine. So the next thing to do is clean up the case actually, and the power supply and leads and things. So I cleaned up the power supply off camera. Can you see how much cleaner that is? We've still got the marks where the rivets were here. You know, someone's been inside this at some point, probably to replace a fuse, I would think. There might be a thermal fuse in there. But as you can see, and look at the cable, it's good as new. I'll give you a closer look in a minute. So I'll show you the technique I used to clean that up on some of the other cables. So these are some of the cleaner cables. Those power supply cables were really bad actually. But all I'm doing is getting some IPA onto paper towel here, or rag or whatever, and just do a bit of this. You know, start at one end, and you'll be able to get any paint marks off and stuff. That white mark there will come off with a bit of work. I'll give that a go in a sec. And then what you can do is you've made a bit of progress. You know, hold it down with a foot like that. And then do a bit of this, and you can just, you know, you go all around the circumference there, just work your way along, you know, just keep moving further back, and you can get all of that dirt off there, but hopefully you can see, you know, how much dirt is actually coming off that. So that's another one down. I'm not even sure what these are for actually, these. I mean, they've got 5-pin DINs on each side. It could be a video cable. The tape port has got, I'll show you, I've got one of these, got two of these cables with it. Yeah, it's got a 5-pin DIN as well, and it goes off to two 3.5mm connectors here for the ear and mic, you know, for recording, you know, output and input if you like, record and play. And also the remote, which has got a smaller 2.5mm connection there. And I tested that on my tape deck as well. The remote thing does work. As the relay clicks, it engages, the play there. If your label is pressed, it won't start until you've typed clodem and press return, and the relay's clicked to, enable the remote signal. So yeah, and I'll clean up the rest of these cables. So you can see I cleaned this up. I got rid of all the sticky stuff that was around there. This is not the original switch that would have been on there. It would have been something similar to that. I'm thinking that might actually fit. There's going to be a gap there, but I reckon I could swap out this thing with that. It does just pull out. I'll show you. Yeah, I'll do it in a minute off camera, but you can see that one of the wires is there. There's two wires, you can just pull them out and it should be alright. I don't know how you actually get in this. You probably have to clip it apart. You can see I cleaned the cable up. Now this cable was super stiff. It kind of gone like a brittle. Now after cleaning it with the IPA, what I did then was use some of that back to black on a rag, and it's softened it. It's made it go soft. You can still see there's kinks and things in it, but it works perfectly, and it's got some flexibility back that it didn't have prior to me doing those two things. Prior to cleaning it and prior to getting some back to black on there. It's like a silicon based stuff, and it's just giving it some softness back. So yeah, that's great. I mean, the stick works fine, the button does work. I've tested it, but I want to swap that out because that's just awful. It's like a light switch, isn't it, or something? Well, it's a single push. It doesn't stay latched or anything, but still, that's like the sort of thing you'd have connected to the mains. You can tell by the Bakelite sort of fascia to that thing. Let's see if I can pull it out. There you go, you can see it's coming out now. You can see the wires. So I could just disconnect those wires, join these up, and I reckon, yeah, look at that. That's the exact dimensions. So I'll have a bit of a gap there, but at least it'll have pretty much the proper button they originally had. I could always cover over the surrounding area with a sticker or something just to cover that hole, because somebody's cut this out here, they've extended it. But the nice thing is, like I say, that's going to clip in there. So I stripped the wires back a tiny little bit there just to get some fresh metal exposed, because they were just barely hanging on, and we'll just tin these up. Bit of solder and flux on there. I'm hoping the depth, yeah, I was going to say I'm hoping it'll accommodate the depth, but it should do. It looks like it's not too deep, that. So I'll get a bit of solder and flux on here as well, just tin these up. Yeah, I think this should be super easy to do, actually. Yeah, a bit of that side, and a bit on that side. I can't imagine it wouldn't work alright, to be honest. And we'll just join that wire up there. May add a bit more solder. Oh, that's not too bad, actually. You can see that. There we go. So we'll just push that back into place. Yeah, so it's not perfect because, like I say, someone has widened the hole there. Let's zoom out a bit. But I could cover over that with something. I could get a piece of plastic over there or something. But yeah, that is the button. I'm pretty sure that's like the original type of button it would have had on there. Yeah, it's certainly better than that god awful thing. Yeah, I'm going to try and find something to fill that with. Yeah, I thought I had some black vinyl, so we'll get this out and we'll see if we can just cut a mask to fit there. I mean, in theory, I was thinking I could print a mask and stick something around there, actually. Something that resembles the original thing with the little arrows pointing out in the 8 directions there. That's a possibility. Anyway, I'm not focusing on that just now. I want to just, let's say, make a mask to stick around here to cover that hole, really, more than anything. So I stuck a piece of vinyl down, as you can see, and I've cut out a little template here, exactly the right profile for the switch. And it's not even, you can see it's not totally flat and stuff there. It's about as good as it's going to get. I'm going to heat up the blade here with the soldering iron. Just make sure that's in the right position. I might tape it down or something, I'm not sure yet. And then just use this to melt, through the vinyl and cut it at the same time. I will have to keep reheating this, in between cuts there, just to make sure. Try and get a nice clean edge. It's not going to matter too much because the overhang here will cover any imperfections. But the nearer to get that to the right place in the centre there, and obviously I've got to try and get it in the right place with respect to, can you see if I put a bit of pressure there, the hole below. But it should just mean that you've not got whole bits of stuff's not going to go inside it, dirt and things like that. So I sprayed some soap and water into our little dragon here, and then just gave it a bit of a brush, all different angles, to get all the bits of dirt out. Ideally, you would want to take the casing apart and stuff and just wash it in the sink. So the next thing we'll do here is clean the inside of the case. I'd be interested to know if your Gary Proctor, was this your dragon? And whoever owned it lived in Stockton. So just using a bit of IPA here, and you should see that most of these will come off with a bit of IPA. Yeah, it's taking a fair bit of effort actually. Some people use like baking soda, that can work quite well. I think the 8-bit guy uses that a fair bit. But I mean IPA, will, let's say, look, get rid of most of that off even though soap and water didn't. You can just soak it in the sink with some Oxy Action or something. I'm going to do the top side in the sink, but the bottom side is quite clean actually. But it's just these marks and things on the sides that are not coming off with soap and water. Yeah, so why not stick a link to my channel while I'm here as well. It's got somebody else's address in it. It's got a bit of a history thing going on. Maybe one day there'll be 2 or 3 owners' details in here. So with the keyboard here, you can just pull these keycaps straight up. They just slide out. So I can, take a photo, pull them all off, clean them all up, put them all back on, and vac out underneath. The keys are actually soldered individually. It's individual switches, for each key there. So if you've got one that's faulty, you need to desolder it, take it off, maybe clean it up with some contact cleaner or something, maybe even disassemble the switch. So that's the keys all off. The space bar, you just lift it up because there's just a single switch here, but then this bar will be attached, through the little holes there. So you've got to pull it one way and try and just pull it out on one side very carefully. You don't want to put too much pressure because you'll break the little posts off if you're not careful. But as you can see, they've all come out. One thing that did happen is the G key, the little, is this one here, I'm not sure, the white piece of plastic came right out with the key and the spring. What you've got to do is put the spring back in first around that little copper thing there. That's presumably those are the contacts, I think. Yeah, they are. Can you see? That's where they make contact. So you could actually, if one of these keys is not working, you could clean the contacts up on this side here. That's how I would approach it. Just pull the cap off and you can clean it pretty easy actually. It's a bit unusual, I've never seen that before. Yeah, so the next thing I need to do now is, like I say, just vac this down, use some cotton buds and IPA and stuff, wipe this down and clean up the keys. So again, like I did in the CPC, I'm doing these by hand one at a time because I want a super clean job actually. Now you can, just soak these in the sink with some Oxy Action or something, get a sponge and some of them and stuff, or a scrubbing brush, and just soaking them will remove most of the dirt. But like I say, I want a super clean job, and I do sort of put a lot of time and effort into these. If you're going to spend so much time doing the other aspects of the repair and restore here, why not, give it the time it deserves? So one by one I could start to get these back on. You can see, I had to clean this up manually with cotton buds and things. Yeah, the enter key goes there, I think, like that. So they're super easy to get back on, just a little bit of push, a bit of a push, they go straight back on. There we go, keyboard painfully cleaned and reassembled. And that spare screw I had is a perfect replacement. So this is definitely a Dragon ROM here. It says on it Dragon, there, copyright 1982 Dragon. I was under the assumption these only had one ROM, but I couldn't work out what this one was here. It's socketed, it's a GI chip. I'm guessing it's a ROM. There must be 2, maybe the basic split over the 2 ROMs. I honestly don't know. I couldn't really find any information on this chip. If you know more about that, please post below. But my first thought was, this is just the basic ROM. That's the only mystery really. Everything else I've been able to work out. I'll show you if we just have a scan around here. You've got PIA here. That's Motorola 6821, 21P. Over here again, MC6821P, another PIA. So those are for, they're a bit like CIAs or VIAs that you get in C64s and VIC-20s and things like that. You've got your MMU here, and there seem to be 2 variants of this. The one that's on this is the 74LS version. Again, I'll stick the part numbers up there for that. And then your VDG over here, and I'm guessing this is an op-amp. It's an LM, I can't see what it is, a 1889 is it, I think, yeah. So this is going to be for your tape input. I would suggest that if you've got problems loading from tape, the first thing we'd look at is swapping that. And as we worked out earlier, this relay is used for the tape, the remote control signal. So if you've got your remote connected up and you're pressing play and your tape deck's not doing anything, you don't hear the click when you swipe clode or clode M. Yeah, you need to swap out that relay. I cleaned up that little pot there with just a bit of IPA, just got some IPA on a Q-tip and just rubbed it around and it all came off. I don't know what it was just some dirt or moisture or something. So in a future video I will swap out these caps here. So just loading from my iPhone here. Now it's been a bit of trial and error. I did try a couple of different tapes before this one, WAV files, and I've used the lossless compression there in iTunes. And it's a bit like with other systems, it's a bit hit and miss. I had that problem with the Spectrum and the Amstrad. You can use your phone, lots of things work, some things don't, and it's a bit puzzling as to why, actually. Other than maybe, the attenuation, the impedance maybe of the connection there, and the volume level and stuff, and how clear that signal is. Compression and stuff can, cause some issues. But as you can see, that's worked okay. Let me just see if there's any sound. I mean, I did hear a jingle there. Yeah, okay. So yeah, that seems to be working. It's incredibly hard to control with the analog stick here, I have to admit, because it doesn't self-censor. But yeah, if you're thinking this looks like Pitfall, you'd be correct. It's pretty much, as far as I can see, a straight rip of Pitfall, actually. I'm amazed they got away with this, unless they maybe licensed it. I don't think they did. Yeah, and that's loaded as well. Now I think you can have 4 players on this, can't you? Is it press 1 to 4, R to redefine keys. Let's see if we can use joystick. Although this would be much easier with keys, actually. Yeah, I'm having to use keys, but as you can see, that's working fine. Got a bit stuck there for a minute. Fantastic. It's just in backwards jump manoeuvre there. You never turned and just jumped. Sweet. Sorry, I know it's over right there, but I just want to show you something. If I press the reset button, it doesn't reset the system completely. Well, it perhaps does do a reset, but the way it's designed to work, it runs the code. So you can actually just reset the game. A minute ago I was trying to get back out to the main menu, and the easy way to do that was just to press the reset button. We've got an interesting thing on the bottom there, a little glitch after pressing reset. Can you see it wasn't scrolling the text there properly? But I'm guessing if we press S to start, yeah, it's working. So yeah, that's a bit curious. But yeah, I noticed on other games you can just press reset and you're back to, as if the game's just loaded. So a quick look after cleaning up with some soap and water and then IPA, you can see, all the marks and things that were on this all the way around have all come off. It's come up really well, actually. We've got a couple of little scratches on the back here, but they're very light, really. Now the logo here, yeah, I could do something with that. You can get replica labels here, to replace that with. I think I'd rather leave this one on. It's a bit rippled there, but I suspect, and I might do this off camera because there will be a follow-up to this. I'm going to recap this and stuff, and I may do other things. I may get, a cocoa rum in there. I'll have to modify it probably to do that, and do some sort of modification to allow the, the keyboard to work correctly with the cocoa rum. But in theory, yeah, I'll revisit this. What I was going to say is you could perhaps heat that. I could perhaps heat that with some hot air, get a hot air dryer onto it, and when the glue warms a bit, I might be able to slide it just a bit more over there, because you can see it's just a bit of a ripple. It's not too bad, actually. Some of these are a lot worse than others. I've seen them where they're totally rippled up in a few places, and you do end up having to replace the thing, but that looks pretty good. These systems, sort of rewinding a bit here, these systems were made in 1982, so that's 35 years old. They're ancient things, really. And as I mentioned earlier, these came from Wales. As you can see there, Dragon Data Limited, Kenfig Industrial Estates, Margam, Port Talbot, West Clam. Yeah, and we've got the serial number there as well. And you can see, it's a 32K model we've been looking at here. There is a Dragon 64. I think it's pretty much the same. It's just got 64K. And it's a different shade of, I think it's like a greyish case rather than the cream. And the other thing worth pointing out, someone's bound to say in the comments, why don't you retro bright it? This is the colour they shipped. My friend Trevor had one that was pretty much brand new, and this is the same cream that his was. So yeah, that's, they are all like that. Some of them do go yellow. I've seen some really yellowed ones. I'll post a link to a couple of channels worth checking out below, actually. I'm giving JaysVintageJunk a shout out. He's done a few videos on dragons, I think. I think he did a recap, actually, recently on one of those. and he may have had a repair, I'm not sure. And the other one's Stig's World. He uses the dragon here for his logo on his channel. You know, so he's a big Dragon fan. I think it was his first computer, actually, the Dragon 32. And you can also, on his channel, Stig's channel, and I think on Jay's as well, they've both connected to some Tandy peripherals. You know, you can use like a Tandy disk drive. You know, something that was designed to work with a, you know, a Coco will work with this, as far as I understand. Some of the cartridges and things will work on this. It depends whether the cartridge makes any basic calls and things. You know, that's where you're going to get compatibility issues. A fair chunk of Coco software will run on this if you re-tokenize it when you load it. I'm not sure what the process is for that, but that's worth knowing as well. And as you can see, the button came out super well on the controller there. You know, it's a bit rippled here. Please post in the comments below. I'm pretty sure that's the buttons that these things shipped with. So we've already marked it inside, but I figure why not stick a label on the underside as well, just to show I've been here. Yeah, red dragons rule. That's Welsh. So hopefully you found that interesting. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.